Gun violence has increased in the Great Lakes region, and in fact, across the entire country in the last several years. We have seen record spikes in gun violence throughout the region and here in Chicago. Murder rates that we have not seen really ever.
When we think about the culture and the climate in the policing agency, it's simply this, a recognition that we can't be successful working separate from the people that we're serving.
There has not been that comprehensive approach to solving the root causes of gun violence. We need to work together to do that.
The goal of the Gun Violence Prevention and Justice Reform Program at the Joyce Foundation is to try and create safe and just communities here in the Great Lakes states. Safe from gun violence, which is taking too many lives in the region of all ages, of all demographics, but particularly of young people of color. In our view, we believe that just policies, if enacted and implemented correctly, make us safer. We work with law enforcement on how can we best implement the current gun safety laws that are on the books, whether that be on gun tracing or ensuring that extreme risk protection orders are used and implemented correctly. And because law enforcement is not in a position to necessarily fund the training that they need or do the research that's necessary to fully implement those policies, we have stepped in and worked closely with them to try and close those gaps.
Our office is utilizing new policies such as Crime Gun Connect, a state-of-the-art crime gun tracing platform that allows law enforcement agencies to be able to trace the origin of crime guns, track trends and patterns, and be able to track gun traffickers and others to stem the flow of guns that are coming into neighborhoods. The Joyce Foundation and my office are working together to lift up the existence of the tool, but to also lift up the importance of opting in as a law enforcement department, because it allows for preventative work to take place. Firearm restraining orders, being able to trace guns and other tools that we have in the toolbox can allow us to prevent incidents of gun violence from happening in the first place.
In more recent years, we've recognized the need to focus more on prevention and intervention, and to work in multidisciplinary approaches to focus on not just neighborhoods, but individuals who really need services.
We think that we can be a proof of concept organization for the work that Joyce Foundation has done. So we view gun violence prevention through two lenses, a lens of equity and a public health lens. In Washtenaw County, we have a violence interruption group that had 14 recommendations to address violence interruption in the community. And a lot of those recommendations align exactly with the recommendations that came from Joyce. Let's be proactive, let's invest in community, let's understand that those individuals that live in those communities are the people that can come up with the best strategies to address. But there's also a recognition that you must partner with law enforcement, that we have to be part of that solution.
Police and what we now call community violence intervention specialists have a lot in common. Everybody wants communities to be safe. Everybody wants people who sincerely want help to be able to get help. Everybody wants trusting and respectful relationships between police and the communities they serve. Whether you're a law enforcement officer or a community violence intervention specialist or a public health worker, you're focused in on the really small number of people at the very highest risk, and you're working to keep them safe and alive.
Work with law enforcement professionals to figure out what are the right questions and then start asking those questions, because then after that we'll know what it is that we absolutely need to do. Community violence intervention is just an example of how you have these different entities all being responsible for public safety. So you have first response models that have a mental health professional that comes along with a police officer, that has someone who specializes in substance use treatment, or someone who is a paramedic. They've responded to well over 300 and some calls. 0 uses of force, 0 arrests so far in the project here in Chicago. And that's only just a small glimpse into what's actually possible, because guess what? People are actually getting what they need.
It helps us be better partners with the communities that we've sworn to serve. It starts to change this narrative that the police can't be part of the solution. So these approaches start to bring us together, and it starts to help us evolve as a profession.
In recent years, we've become much more attuned to this rise in political violence, or violence that people are willing to take in order to further their political goals.
We're living in a very divided society right now. Sadly, our partisan politics are more divided than ever, and I think that has spilled over into our communities as well.
21CP is an outgrowth of a table of law enforcement leaders from the 21st Century Task Force on Policing, organized by President Obama. So we recently approached 21CP to better understand how law enforcement can more effectively address and mitigate concerns around political violence in our communities.
We've worked closely with the Joyce Foundation on 2 initiatives recently. We produced one report that deals with rooting out extremism in law enforcement. We make lots of suggestions about better recruitment, about more accountability, about policies that should be in place to prevent extremism in law enforcement. And we've produced another report that focuses on demonstration management and people's rights to exercise First Amendment protections. And we've been able to work in several major cities across the country to try to bring modern police practices and constitutional police practices to the communities there.
We think that the beginning and end of collaboration and alignment between community violence intervention specialists and law enforcement is to build relationships and to share as much information as folks safely and legally and ethically can share, and to be centered by that primary goal of working to keep communities safe from violence.
For too long, we haven't been able to do any research really at all on gun violence and on justice reform, and again, that issue of violence intervention. That's starting to change, and we're learning a lot as a result. And that information is going to lead to new policies that we don't quite know exist yet. And we're committed to investing the resources necessary to better understand that and convert that data to new policy ideas that policymakers around this region, around the country, can adopt.